Hello, Jim. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Vita. Nice to be here with you as always.
Thank you. I'm really interested to talk about grounding. It's kind of been a hot topic in the last few years. There's been some great documentaries about grounding and what you do going out into the earth and the ion charges and how it really is literally grounding your body and moving off some electrical charges. We talk about grounding in level 1, but it's pretty unique as compared to like grounding with your feet and going on the earth. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the grounding that you're going to learn inside the level 1 course versus grounding with your feet?
Sure. Grounding is a natural state of your existence. It's who you are. And what happens, though, is people begin to spend so much time in their thoughts, they just simply take their attention off of being stable, present, calm, aware. And we get all kind of really wound up in all of the noise. So in the level 1 work, in all of Mastering Alchemy, grounding is simply that line that extends from the tip of the spine, the first chakra. It's actually kind of like extending the spine into the center of the earth. It's always there, but it does not always get used or kind of respected. It's there, but when you stop using it, it simply doesn't stay as animated, as alive as it does when you, again, are present and quiet. And you take a breath and you're right here and you say, okay, now what's going on? Grounded.
So what is it that causes you to lose the attention? So we're born with it, we have it, but why are we losing it?
Mostly it's just lack of attention. It's lack of being present. It's kind of how we've all been taught. One of the key things that we've been taught is go to them and they will tell you you're okay. Whoever the okay, the mom, dad, teacher, minister, anybody. And so we have a tendency to look away from ourselves for validation and for knowing what to do next. And so when a person begins to recognize that they can take a breath and say, okay, now what do I do now? And they're not in past, future, worry, fear. Am I going to do it wrong? That grounding cord just becomes a very stabilizing factor in really kind of pulling the electricity off the body. See, all your thoughts are very electrical. And so when you get into scatter, I'm not okay, and what do they think of me? That begins to be an erratic electrical field. And so thoughts being electrical, grounding rounds off the excess electrical charges, the excess electrical noise. So again, when somebody gets quiet and says, all right, what am I going to do here? Everything gets into an alignment. But for the most part, we don't walk around paying attention to ourselves. We're so engaged in everything else. And so the simple answer is take a breath, put your feet on the ground, recognize they're on the ground, another breath, you're grounded. The whole body begins to be grounded through that grounding cord and begins to feel more comfortable, more present, more orderly versus erratic. And it's simply because the grounding starts to work again. You give it attention to siphon off the excess electricity that's making me nervous, giving me anxiety, causing me to be distressed. So grounding is simply a way of kind of finding yourself comfortably and allowing everything that's not yours to ground off the body.
So this is really fantastic because I feel like you pulled out something at least I haven't seen before. When you're talking about grounding, there's a self-authority that if you're always, like you said, looking outside of yourself or needing validation, which we do, right? We want our friends to like us. We want to fit in. We don't, we like having family and friends and smiling. So it's difficult when we face those things that are really uncomfortable in front of us. And so we're trying to constantly adjust ourselves to fit in. But in the same sense, what you're saying, this is like, okay, no, I'm not adjusting myself. I'm centered. I'm grounded. I have my self-authority. And then how do you manage with what's on the outside then when you're trying to fit in? And I want to, be liked and have a great time in life. So how do you manage that?
But fitting in quite often is in a simple way, just giving up your seniority. One way or another, you're doing what somebody else told you to do, or the world works this way, somebody else said, and we're trying to fit it all in. And quite often, it doesn't line up. If you just think about it, you aren't sure often. I'm uncertain often. They know more than I do quite often. And so that grounding begins to give you a stability that allows you to discern, make a decision, own yourself in a way that begins to be comfortable once you play at grounding in this way we're talking. But what happens is you can own your seniority and still enjoy people. You can still allow them to have their point of view. You can allow them to kind of play the game out, and you can still be respectful to them, quiet. You don't have to argue at a point of view that is different than yours. It's really this kind of pulling yourself in, taking a breath, allowing the world to go by you without having to do something about it. And then where you choose to engage with the world around you, you engage. But doing it from a grounded, centered, quieter place usually gets you a different result. I mean, how often have you just reacted to, people go into reaction and it's like, no, that's not true. And you really make me angry. Well, where's the feeling when somebody, this makes me angry? It's in here. This is where the anger is. And so do you really want to be in anger? Resentment, anxiety, nervousness, off-balanceness? And the purpose of recognizing the grounding is it's very stabilizing. It allows you to choose differently when you are grounded.
So this is a great place to bring up a comment you've made in the past about the unconscious space where we'll just agree with things, where we'll just go, oh, okay, so it's going to rain today, you hear, and then the next moment you're like, okay, it's going to rain. And then they say, it rains. And then the next day they say, oh, it's going to be sunny. You have this automatic instinct reaction to just believe what it is they say. So so in this environment, when you're bringing in the grounding, you're really that self-authority check goes, oh, does this information even apply to me? Is this something important for me to even pay attention to? Is kind of what you're bringing up. So it disrupts that pattern of unconscious, I'm just going to believe you. Or could you speak a little bit more into that?
Sure. By definition of that word, unconscious or subconscious, and then there's conscious. But that unconscious and subconscious are very real aspects of where somebody thinks and then allows the thought that drives them next to stay in that space of not revalidating it, accessing it, asking the question, is this really true? Is it really going to rain tomorrow? And it's not hard to get to, but we get so much into this semi-conscious state where, well, they said this is how it's going to be. And we just choose to believe something. Many times the something is 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, something you heard when you were in 7th grade and you said, oh, okay, I got it. And we hold on to it, but it winds up in that subconscious, unconscious space. And then we are always nervous because, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Which is what the heart is saying. Quite often, I'm off balance and I don't know why. And so grounding being one of the very fundamental aspects of you being a conscious being, choosing intentionally the direction you wish to go. It's not unconscious. It's not semi-conscious. It's I'm alive, I'm well, I'm present, I'm senior, I'm certain about it. This is what I want to do. That sense of where you kind of exhale and then feel, okay, I'm grounded, even though that's not the word that somebody would use. But here, as we're talking about it, for those that are listening, start to recognize when all of a sudden you get quiet and then relax. And there, the grounding takes over.
So how does this bring in the component where you've mentioned before, all your thoughts aren't yours? And so there, that uncertainty, well, is this my thought? Is this somebody else's thought? Is this my belief? Is this somebody else's? How can you navigate in that spaces, or how does grounding affect that state of being?
Great question. So in a way, grounding is just one of a number of aspects of you being very present, certain, aware. Another one is, where do you perceive your world from? And so what we do in all of the work is ask a very simple question. Are you in the center of your head? And some people go, well, that's a strange question. Well, no, center of my head. It's kind of a point that's right here, and right here you draw two lines and it's right behind the eyes. And so for those of you listening, take a breath and pull your attention back right behind your eyes and see the wall, picture, painting, whatever is out there in front of you, and take a breath. This is an intentional, conscious space that allows you to choose. There's another aspect of all of this, that aura that you have around you. That's a very real, tangible thing for everything that's organic in life. Everything has an aura. But that aura is, in a way, a collection, on one hand, of your perception of the world. Now, if you don't know where that aura kind of starts and stops, because there is a point where it starts and stops, you really don't know what's yours and what's not yours. It's whose truth is this that I'm listening to? And so when you can begin to use another tool, the rose, and put it at the edge of the aura and pull yourself to this side and be right behind your eyes, and then ask the question consciously, they're saying X, is that true for me? Well, the rose allows that what they're saying to kind of stop right at the edge, and everything from the heart to the rose is yours, and everything out there is Shakespeare's theater to be amused by or observe and choose from. So when you begin to put these pieces together, the ability to be grounded, present, center of your head, allows you to really ask the question, is this my truth? Is this my thought? Now, some people say, well, it's my body. Of course it's my thought. Well, pause and think about it. Who told you that? Did you validate that? Did it even occur to you that it might not be real and it might not be your thought? And so this whole process of beginning to know yourself, grounding yourself, being present in yourself, allows you to discern, allows you to choose, allows you to take a breath and just step back from a lot of the noise that typically you may have been putting your finger into that light socket and arguing with and walking away. And how can they be saying that? Where's the thought? And it sits there and spins. You go to bed at night going, why did they say that? Why did they say that? In real terms, doesn't matter why they said anything. It's the energy that's running through your body, and it's your body that's upset, angry, uncomfortable, anxiety. So the question about the ground is, would you like to get rid of that anxiety, that nervousness, that uncomfortableness? Would you like to start to define yourself in a way that I can choose my life and I can observe what's going on in addition, and I can put it together on my terms? And you can do that without insulting anybody, offending anybody. You start basically grounding.
So this is powerful. First, and grounding, I guess what I'm hearing you say is being kind of one of the first very fundamental steps of starting to become more conscious, more aware of what's even going on, pulling out those things out of the subconscious that come in if we unconsciously do. We're just drop into anger or drop into these thoughts or feelings, but they might not even be ours in the first place. So we're really starting to manage and choose every thought and every emotion is, I think, something you speak about a lot, and how that creates and opens up a whole new world of choices, a whole new level of freedom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have you ever had a mood swing? All of a sudden you're uncomfortable, you're sad, you're not feeling emotionally solid. Where did that come from? How did that happen? Well, when you ask that question, you usually don't have an answer. But if you start playing at where you're able to be grounded and ask that question with an intention of where did that really come from? The interesting thing is instantaneously the answer will appear. Another one of the fundamental realities in your existence is the answer lies exactly where the question is asked. But what we do, we're so scattered, generally thinking about this and going to that, worrying about the future, hoping the past doesn't bite me in the butt. And that motion is so scattered that you don't pause to recognize again, gee, this isn't even, I'm happy. Why am I matching everybody around me who are in argument? And then pretty soon that uncomfortableness is in my space. Another set of tools that Rose is used for many things. Would you like to simply begin to move that energy out of your space just by a set of choices that haven't been available to you, they've always been available to you, but haven't been accessible because I didn't know I could do that, is what people say often in this level 1, level 2 work. I didn't know.
Let's talk a little bit about, if we can dive into some of the struggles or where it's hard to get into grounding. So if you are in a state of nervousness, right, your body is already in a physical reaction state and you're just tight, you're tense, and how do you, you're repeating on your head, I'm grounded, I'm grounded, I'm grounding, I'm grounding right now. Like, bring yourself into the state of grounding. Sometimes you can trick yourself into believing you're grounding when you're not actually grounded.
Mm-hmm. So there's a difference between thinking something and experiencing something. And where usually the rational mind is very clever in telling you, okay, I'm grounded, in this case, this conversation. But it usually tells you that when you have all your attention on the past or the future or the nervousness, we'll call it, or the whatever is going on. It's as if you are saying, okay, I want a better choice. I want to experience myself differently, but don't. So the purpose of level 1 very specifically is creating a set of choices, awarenesses, grounding, center of your head, edge of your rose, and beginning to recognize, oh, this is all going on. Now I'm conscious of a choice versus I heard of grounding. Okay, I'm grounded. No, you're not grounded. You're just talking to yourself. And so the difference between pausing, taking a breath, and feeling that sensation of relaxing into the body, another breath, stepping back and realizing, oh, I don't need to be here. This is too noisy. That's a choice. But it's like, oh, ground, 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 please. It's just talking to yourself and not engaging in an action, changing your behavior, changing your physiology into a place that allows you to have a different result on your terms.
So this is a really great place to go. All right, so there's the conceptual thinking, I'm grounded, into the I'm feeling grounded. And it gets a little dicey here because there's a level of, I only know what I know. So for someone who's like grown up in a difficult environment or always has stress or loud noise around them, that's what they're used to. So there's this interesting process of awareness that continues, I guess, as you're trying to get quieter and quieter, because you only ground as far as you can ground. Would that be?
Well, yes and no. So first, the person who's listening to this is listening to this for a reason. I want to make an adjustment in how I do things. Or I heard about this and that was interesting to me. You see, the heart naturally aligns with grounding, center of your head, there's a natural alignment to each one of us, and each one of us knows that. There's some place where in your life you stepped back and you went, there's a bigger answer here for me. So, but this space where you're in this state of being, there's going to be 100 people that are never going to hear this conversation between you and me. They're not asking the question. But the person who's sitting here is saying, I want something different. There is more. And so in that space, when you begin to ask that question, one of the ways that these tools are kind of presented, they're simply, here, try this and see what happens. And one of the things we say is practice when it doesn't count. You know, you don't want to be in your most uncomfortable experience and going, oh, how did that grounding thing work? Because when you're in those type of experiences and you have played with your grounding, it's naturally there. It doesn't just come at command. What you're doing here is you're putting yourself back together. You are reassembling, rewiring, remembering who you are. And so as you begin to play with these tools, one of the things that's important is, does this work for you? And there's no truth in any of this mastering alchemy work. It's here, try this, and try it when it doesn't count so you can have an experience of noticing it. It works. All of a sudden it works.
So you brought up two really good points. One, practice when it doesn't count. So you can kind of start to get into know what quiet feels like. So when you're out of balance, you're like, I need to ground. You can go, okay, well, what did that feel like the last time I did it? Or what does grounding feel like in my body? And you're saying the heart, the mind, body just naturally aligns into that with the intention, because that is what your intention is. So very interesting to notice that it's an intentional action, and then getting into the aligning the feeling into the intention, and then moving into that space. And then the second part that what's really interesting that you said was how we move into spaces and we're kind of leaving those things behind, if that makes sense, and how we're adjusting into, you go to the grocery store and you kind of forget your original reference point, and how you're continually like working to bring that back into this state of being that you were into. Does that kind of line out the practice well enough, or?
Well, it's a practice when it doesn't count. It's like anything else. You know, you do it once and you say, okay, I've got it. Well, generally that's not true. But if you do it a couple of times and you do it and you kind of make a game out of it, being grounded or center your head, whatever it may be, what is different about learning something new versus remembering something that's always been there? See, grounding is a natural state of you. When you just start to take a breath and realize, oh, this makes me comfortable. You're not learning anything new. You are really basically recognizing something you forgot to put your attention on. And if it's intentional, I want to know about these tools. I want to know about how to manage my life. And you kind of, where we set up level 1 and 2, particularly, and you start saying, do this, what happens? And you begin to do it often more and more. What happens is that natural state of being just illuminates, just becomes your natural state of being. You are conscious of it. You're not playing in the rational mind going, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? In fact, the funny part about it is after a little while, you realize you have a situation and you lose your grounding. And it's like, oh, wow, I'm not grounded. But you didn't sit for 3 weeks going, I'm grounded. You just simply will all of a sudden recognize that it is a natural state of who you are. And something will happen that'll knock you out of your space a little bit. And you'll realize, I just lost my space. I just lost my grounding. Wow. That's the validation more often than, okay, I've done it 100 times and now I've got it. You can do it once. And if you just pay attention to the relaxation and the kind of the weight that settles into the chair, and if you're really brave, and kind of the advanced part of all the work we do is, I like me. Try that one. I like me. The grounding just settles in such a way that it begins to be comfortable.
That's brilliant. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's such a nice relaxation of the mind, because we're always wanting, did I do it right? No, just take a breath, breathe. It's your natural state of being. It's not something you have to think through. I love that. So in the last piece and question I want to ask you is about, there's a lot of variation. You said that mastering alchemy is not a truth. Come try it. See if it works for you. So we get a lot of fun questions inside Mastering Alchemy where, can I ground on an airplane? Am I going to crash the airplane if I ground? What if my grounding cord looks like it's green? What if it's trees and roots? So talk a little bit about the variation of how it's not a truth, or how you create your practice for you.
So this is a practice for you, but every one of us have the knowledge of what a grounding cord is. Everybody on the planet, everything that's organic has a connection to the earth. And so if you were to recognize that, if you were sitting here right now and kind of comfortable, relaxed, present, and you're playing with this grounding, and you close your eyes, does it matter whether you're on an airplane or on the top of the mountain or at the bottom of the ocean? No, you're grounded. And so there's no conditionality to, can I ground when it's cold? Can I ground when it's hot? Yeah, you can do it. You don't say, is my arm going to work for me when the temperature changes? No, it's going to work for you. That's the nature of grounding. Center of your head, edge of your rose, beginning to play with some of these other awarenesses that come into this experience in level 1. So you can use a tree trunk. You can use whatever imagery. Close your eyes and create a big chain and let it just drop to the center of the planet. Hook it onto the bottom of the spine, first chakra. It'll ground into the center of the earth. See, the other thing is the earth doesn't choose and doesn't care about whether you were a bad person or a good person, whether you did it right or you did it wrong, or whether you're guilty and it doesn't care. And so if you want to let go of guilt, blame, victim, and you're genuinely saying, I don't have to carry this around anymore, because that's the whole point of level 1 and level 2, and you're able to simply let it go, the earth doesn't care. It's energy that it's just taking in, transforming back into love and beauty and well-being, and brings it back up to the earth. You cannot do this wrong. You cannot screw this up. So it's a place where just play and see what happens when you like yourself and start to give to yourself in a little different way.
Excellent. And I'll add one more piece just from my experience to this too, is where I expected when I was going to feel grounding that I would feel going down or feel grounded, feel connected to the earth somehow. But my experience was very more of a centering, if that makes sense. So I loved, and you're brought up that you always have the grounding cable. So even though we go through exercises where we're paying attention to it, you're not losing it. You're just losing your attention to it. Would that be accurate to say?
Exactly. You just moved your attention to something else. As you play with it, it doesn't stop and go and stop and go. As you play with it, you start to bring it into an aware, and you start to get comfortable in yourself being grounded. It doesn't go away. Now you go away, you can get angry, you can get upset, you can do something else where you're giving more attention to the uncomfortable event than you are to being present in your space. That happens. That's going to happen. What makes it really interesting is you start to recognize, oh, that happened again. And you realize I can do something about that. And then you start to find you have this similar experience and you didn't lose your space. You didn't fall apart. You just simply said, oh, well, that's interesting. Thank you very much. And let it go by you. So these tools begin to create a stability and a point of reference that's different than the anger, irritation, past, future. And grounding basically sets that all in motion.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jim. This has been very enlightening. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.